First and foremost, you recently resigned. It has hardly been, it's hardly been a few months since the Taliban took control of Kabul. Your resignation comes at a very critical time. You have been criticized by the critics, and they say that you gave a lot of concessions to Taliban in your Doha agreement. Do you stand by those?
I think the Doha agreement was the best that could be achieved under the circumstances of the time. One that the war was not going well. For the previous several years, the Taliban were gaining more ground. Two, that the United States was in a difficult situation in Afghanistan because of the military trends and wanted to reduce its footprint and to withdraw because it was costing a lot. Three, that the US came to that decision because the world had changed and there were new priorities such as dealing with changing the balance of power in Asia, and the US needed to adjust. And four, that the basic reason why the US had gone to Afghanistan, which was the attack of 9/11, the terrorism attack had also changed. Afghanistan was not as central in the terrorism threat as it once was. So President Trump asked me to come in to see if we could negotiate an agreement that would ensure that Afghanistan did not become a place from which the US could be threatened by terrorists, but also to bring Afghans together to see if they could make a political agreement, since we didn't see a military solution anymore.
Mm-hmm. But that didn't happen.
Well, the Taliban-US agreement, the Doha agreement, opened the door to Afghan negotiations. And they met for the first time in 40 years. But then what you also got is that the situation deteriorated in Afghanistan while the Taliban agreed not to attack the United States forces as we were withdrawing. And for 18 months plus, not a single American was killed by the Talibs, while we had the right, the US had the right to come to the defense of the Afghan forces if the Talibs attacked them, and we did. But then the negotiations did not succeed during the period before the collapse because of the gap between the two sides, and both sides are to be blamed for that. But the US staying there was also not sustainable.
You also blame Ashraf Ghani for his non-compliance. Do you think had he complied to and stayed, attached with this script, things would have been different?
Certainly, the fact that he didn't and ran away did not help. And so, although we don't know exactly what would have happened if he had stayed, but certainly there was a chance, a better chance than his departure, to get an agreement. First, for a long time, he was not supportive of the peace process. It took him a long time to send an inclusive delegation. And then it took a long time to get to inter-Afghan negotiations. He released prisoners, but it took 6 months to release them. Although the agreement specified that 10 days after the US signed the agreement, the Taliban inter-Afghan negotiations would start. But it took 6 months to do it. And then he miscalculated about US withdrawing. He believed the US wouldn't withdraw. And then he miscalculated about the resilience of his forces. And then at the end, even as Kabul was being surrounded, we got an agreement, the US and from the Taliban, not to enter Kabul, but for the Afghan government to send an empowered delegation to negotiate an inclusive government. The Talibs agreed, they announced it, and also his chief of staff announced it. But the same day that this agreement was announced, without many of his inner circle knowing, he departed Afghanistan for Uzbekistan and then UAE.
So the humanitarian crisis that Afghanistan is facing right now, U.S. was there for 20 years. Billions were spent. What do you think is the cause of such a sudden collapse and decline of Afghanistan?
Well, of course, there are several aspects to the collapse. One is the military collapse. And I think that we have to study, and I'm sure a lot of books and assessments will be made as to why. Did we build that force too much in our own image, too dependent on the United States psychologically and operationally? Did the military did not believe in the cause for which they were fighting? They were fighting as long as the U.S. was there, almost like they were fighting for the U.S., although there was huge sacrifices that some of them had made. But nevertheless, did they believe in the republic? Did the leadership of the military, the Afghan military, political and military leadership, make mistakes in how they treated the military? Did they change the leaders a lot? So there are lots of factors, including what U.S. may have done, that needs to be looked at as to why the military collapsed. On the humanitarian front, of course, Afghanistan became very dependent on foreign assistance. 75% of the expenditure of the government came from the U.S. We paid for most of the military salaries and civil servant salaries. So all of that has stopped. And even the monies that Afghanistan has had in international banks are not available to Afghanistan now. And besides the big change that happened, although there is some positive in the security dimension, that the war is no longer there, but there are lots of problems that the new government faces. There is the issues of inclusivity, rights of the citizens of Afghanistan. And so the international community also has not come to terms with this change yet. And there is more work to do. But meanwhile, because of the policies not to make assistance available and not to make the monies available, the suffering of the Afghan people, economic suffering, has increased. Although everybody is committed internationally to providing humanitarian assistance, and that's a good thing, but it needs to be done quickly and urgently, no matter how unhappy some people might be about what happened. But the Afghan people should not suffer as a result of that disagreement between the international community and the Taliban. They are the innocent victims of the circumstances in which they had not much to say. They didn't have much of a role.
Now, in the recently we see that, yes, there have been talks concerning the marriage rights in property, in marriage, but we see no progress when it comes to education and work environment for women in Afghanistan.
Well, there is progress in that domain too, but not enough. There is progress that in maybe a dozen provinces or a few now education from elementary school through college is open for women. High school was a problem for young girls in all of Afghanistan now. Is not a problem in some of the provinces. Second, that the Taliban have said there will be all schools at all levels will be open, but it has to be done as soon as possible. And besides, there should be the clarity on women's right to work, even in senior positions. As Mao Zedong said, women hold half of the sky. So if a country that doesn't allow the talents of half of its population to be available to it and to contribute, that country wouldn't achieve its full capability. And as I said, Afghanistan is not the same as in the 90s. There's a lot of educated people and men and women. And I think there is a need for another decree and soon that deals with education and employment. I hope that will come soon.
So a lot has been said about Pakistan's role in all of this, about helping or not helping Taliban. that being said, there's still a regional sort of effort going on Pakistan's part in trying to mend sort of, in peace talks and in getting the countries together and for regional peace specifically. How do you see the future of that with the lens of Pakistan? Where do you see Pakistan?
I think it's a very important lens to look at first. And second, I think Afghanistan's peace and stability is very important for Pakistan, and it's important for the region because I think General Bajwa is the one who has said to me repeatedly that countries don't develop, regions develop. And President Ghani used to say similarly that regional connectivity and trade and development is so important. For example, for products from Uzbekistan to come to Multan in Pakistan, it takes now 26 days because that's to go by land, then through Iran, then gets on a ship, comes to Karachi, and then is on train. If there was peace in Afghanistan and there was connectivity, meaning a railway, which, for example, Uzbekistan wants to build a railway from Uzbekistan, Mazar-e-Sharif, Kabul, Peshawar, and then from Peshawar you join the train system of Pakistan. It will take 26 hours, 26 days versus 26 hours. So they are very anxious to the Central Asians to have access. Afghanistan could be a kind of land bridge between Central Asia and Pakistan and South Asia or the sea. So I think we need to broaden the horizon. Sometimes they say you have to enlarge an issue, but have to find the right solution. And I think that Afghanistan economically will benefit, its stability will benefit from cooperation regionally, integration, connectivity, whether it's in communication, transportation, power, and I know that there is a lot of interest in Pakistan, there's a lot of interest in Afghanistan. For Afghanistan, it's vital, and it's a lot of interest in Central Asia. And I hope that as the peace effort or effort to integrate Afghanistan, have closer relationship with Afghanistan, is put into this larger context that should be the goal of the region, of Afghanistan, of Pakistan, of Central Asia, how to have this region become more focused on each other in terms of being trade and development and cooperation. That's something I'm going to spend some time on thinking about, helping and conceptualizing moving forward.
So with the same lens, how do you see the US-Pakistan relations at this point? Because ever since this started in August, there was a Cold War, but now it's on another level. Yeah. What's going on there?
Well, I think there is some people in the US who think Pakistan could have done more to help. There are some people who think that. There are people who also look back at, the presence of the Taliban leaders in Pakistan, and so there are people who think that. But I think it's important to look forward. And now that the situation is as is, I engaged Pakistan very heavily during my tenure as the envoy. And Pakistan said that to me that they would cooperate with the peace process because they always thought, they argued from the Prime Minister Imran Khan to General Bajwa to others, that they always believed that there was no military solution in Afghanistan. There was only a political solution. And they thought the mission that I came with was, they thought that was the right mission, because it was a political effort at the political negotiations. And I think we need to be future-oriented. There should be no interference in each other's affairs between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and in fact, the whole region. Otherwise, this cooperation that I'm talking about won't happen. There will be respect for each other's sovereignty, and I think Pakistan has an important role to play. It's the biggest market for products from Central Asia. It also gives all these countries access to the sea. Afghanistan is landlocked, Uzbekistan is landlocked. They need that access to deal with the world. We need to adjust a little bit. This region has been too focused on zero-sum, narrow security issues. Time to broaden the horizon, learn from, I mean, we can't be that ambitious, but learn from experience of other regions that were not working well, and then they change, Southeast Asia, ASEAN, for example, or you get even the experience of Europe. This region is highly unregulated. The cooperation is very limited, very little trade among the countries of the area, and I think that should be the focus. Some call it geoeconomics or development or trade. I think that will be helpful to Afghanistan, but you have to have trust that there is non-interference in internal affairs, the respect for sovereignty of each other, so that you can work on things that are beneficial to both sides. Because security often is seen as zero-sum, but I think there is an opportunity to adjust the vision, and I certainly am very committed to working on that.
So how do you see the future of Afghanistan?
I think really the future of Afghanistan is primarily now in the hands of the Afghans themselves, but with more, the region plays an important role, and the world also has a role. And I see at least, I see two futures. One is a future that's hopeful. The war has ended if the Taliban learn from the mistakes of the past and move towards inclusivity, rights, respect for rights, normalcy with relations with the region and the world. That's a positive view, but it really depends on the Talibs, and there are mixed signals, some positive, some not. So we hope that it becomes all positive. The alternative is a repetition of the past, which would be, the suffering of the Afghan people, conflict, interference by outsiders in its affairs. And it is the duty of all Afghans, certainly, in my view, and the responsibility of responsible countries to help Afghanistan move in the first option or first future that I described, this hopeful future, and to avoid and to do what we can to avoid the second, the negative and the dangerous, the undesirable alternative.